Good afternoon on this snowy February day. Hello, I am Marcia Sear from Kenosha Public Library, Head of Outreach, Programs, and Education. Thank you for joining us for our second in the Small Business Lunch and Learn series. I would like to turn the meeting over to one of our co-hosts, Savannah Myers.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all for being here, either virtually right now or watching this later on. We are super excited about this series, just kind of helping out small businesses, hearing kind of the things that the community has been talking about and educational components they really want. So today we are going to be doing pricing for small business profitability with the SBDC. And next month on March 12th, we will be doing our final of this series for this time. And it will be Access to Capital, which will be hosted by WIBIC. So now I would like to introduce Catherine at the SBDC to do her presentation.
All right, thanks so much, Savannah. Yeah, excited to be here and talk a bit about profitability. So I did create a PowerPoint that I'm going to share. Mhm. All right, just make sure everybody can see that, right? We're all good.
You're
Okay,
good to go.
perfect. Okay, so today's agenda, welcome introductions. We just had introductions from Savannah and Marcia. So we will, after the introductions, I'm going to share a bit about my journey as a business owner. I am the director of the Small Business Development Center at Parkside. I've also started multiple businesses, and so I want to talk through some of my own experiences around starting a business and specifically pricing, some of the lessons that I've learned along the way. I'll talk about the three common pricing strategies and their pros and cons. There are many other pricing strategies, but I'm just really going to be mentioning three that are some of the most common that small businesses look at. But again, there's others that can be implemented. And I will give examples of each pricing strategy. So work through an actual example with the numbers on one of the pricing strategy, and then just share some examples of companies that we know that are using these pricing strategies and how small businesses can incorporate them. Some common pricing mistakes that I see small businesses make. I want to review a P&L example. So I have one, the name of the client is blocked off because, we have to keep everything confidential, but this is just a review of a P&L. So you can really get an idea of how pricing is going to impact your bottom line in business. We'll take questions and I'll give a quick SBDC overview and then how to contact us. So any questions throughout, feel free to just reach out, put it in the chat, or let me know. And so I'll go ahead and get started. So I put some photos here to kind of talk through some of my journey as a business owner. So I started my first company in 2011, and those are some of the pictures that are on the left of the screen for me. I started a company called Protect Your Pumps, and I created this shoe protector that went on the bottom of women's high heel shoes. So you can kind of see at the bottom, there's an example of how it looks. It came in this pink packaging and it was an adhesive that went on the soles of shoes. And they were really used on high-end shoes to protect the soles from getting scratched up. So I had this idea when I was working at a department store at Neiman Marcus in Chicago, and my customers complained a lot about their shoes, the soles getting dirty and having to resole them. And we would have fashion shows at the store and put duct tape at the bottom of the shoes. And so I thought that concept was really nice, but the duct tape kind of looked tacky. So came up with this clear adhesive that went on the soles of shoes. So this was the first business. I really did not know what I was doing. When I approached pricing, I just kind of guessed, if in all honesty, on what I thought the price should be. Like, $10 sounds good for this, right? And so I had to make a lot of adjustments along the way, and I can talk more about that where I landed. But over the years, I had that business for 9 years, and I remember ending at a price of $29.99 for a 3-pack of the shoe protectors. And so that was based on my cost and based on a markup of a specific margin that I wanted to make. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I was very much a novice when it came to pricing in that business. The second business that I started is I actually was helping my mom with the body care business. That's some of the business, the pictures at the bottom. And you can see we were selling these natural products, sugar scrubs, bath salts, and we would sell them in gift boxes, natural lip balms. We still have an Etsy store. I'm not really that active with it. My mom does still work on it some, but we have an Etsy store. We had a Shopify. We also would do farmers markets. That's one of the photos there. And that I got a lot better, I feel like, with pricing in terms of the raw materials that was going into that product and really trying to have a good margin there. What I struggled with in that business was that this was very labor intensive to make all of the products, right? So I really didn't account for the labor in the way that because we were just doing it ourselves and didn't have employees. But this is a real common mistake that businesses make, and they really don't consider their labor when looking at the pricing. So I would say I got a little bit better with pricing, but I still was struggling because I wasn't really considering the labor costs. And then over here on the far right, some of the pictures at the bottom is I now have a biscuit business that I do on the side on top of working at the SBDC. So I have a I rent from a commercial kitchen in Milwaukee. And last year was my first farmers market season. And so I did mainly biscuits and then also some other dessert items. And I feel now I'm really in the sweet spot with my pricing where I am taking into account my cost, my overhead, and my labor. So this is like 15, 16 years in the making of really feeling like I don't know if I'm an expert, but I'm getting a lot better at pricing. So happy to share more about any of those specific journeys. But that is an overview of me and business. So I would say the most common pricing strategy is the cost plus pricing strategy. This is a strategy that sets the selling price based on the cost of an item plus a markup. Okay, this is pretty much the pricing strategy that I have used for most of my businesses. Product-based businesses use this a lot. Some of the pros is it's very simple to use. All you have to do is determine your costs, which I say all you have to do, but that's not always very easy for folks or folks don't want to do. But once you determine your costs, you have to create a desired profit margin. So those are the two things you have to figure out. It's reliable, tried and true if done right. Again, I say if done right because a lot of times people do not understand the true cost of their product, whether it's the raw materials, the labor, or the overhead. They just don't really have a good grasp on all of the costs that are going in there. So sometimes this can be a little bit inaccurate. But it's also easy to understand and easy to explain to customers. So, for example, right, we all know eggs are really expensive right now. Well, I have a baking business. It's very easy to explain to why customers, your product has to go up in price because they go to the grocery store too and see that prices are going up, right? So as your material costs go up, prices have to go up, right? We saw that a lot during COVID when there were supply chain issues. Everyone was feeling the pinch of that. That's really easy to explain to your customers to say, we have to go up because our materials have gone up. Doesn't take into account competition or the market demand for your product. And it also neglects the customer's willingness to pay and any perceived value that your product might have, right? So this is just the most simple strategy. It is not really that nuanced. And so it doesn't take into account some of these other areas that I think are really important to look at when you're considering pricing. let's see. So another pricing strategy, common strategy, it's becoming more value pricing strategy. And this sets the selling price based on what they believe the customer is willing to pay. So, in essence, how much your product or service is worth to the customer. Um, I'm going to talk about it more, but I really like to think Apple is a company that does this really well, and they have kind of mastered the value pricing strategy. It's not necessarily about how much the phone costs, because let's be honest, the phone probably costs like pennies on a dollar, maybe let's say our iPhones cost $3, and they sell them for $1,000. They're not really using a cost plus strategy. They're looking at the value that that phone is bringing to your life, right? The convenience it's bringing you, the ability to get information at your fingertips notice, right? What is that value it's going to bring to your life beyond just looking at the cost? This is a great way to maximize revenue and profit, right? So again, Apple's a larger company, but looking at it, they're making way more profit than just a standard kind of small business would look at, be able to make just looking at the cost strategy that we talked about earlier. And also with the value pricing strategy, you can weed out people who don't and won't value what you have to offer. So, I mean, basically, yeah, people who aren't going to be willing to pay a higher price for your product, you know, it saves you time and energy trying to market and sell and bang your head up against the wall to a customer that might not be your customer. The cons are that this takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of research to really understand your customer and their willingness to pay for a certain product or service. So, this requires time, this requires money, this requires resources, which small businesses really just usually don't have a ton of time to be mining through the data and conducting surveys and like learning all the demographic, they doing all of that deep diving that's required to really have a successful value pricing strategy. So this is one of the reasons that small businesses kind of opt not to do this. And if you're creating a product or a service, I always say your value will increase over time. So you don't start off as an expert. You don't start off always like we all have inherent value, but your value is going to grow over time. And so sometimes this is not necessarily the best strategy for people who are just getting started, right? So again, I'm kind of in the baking space. I think about say a cake designer, right? When they're first getting started, to have this value pricing strategy might be difficult because their skills might not be there yet. They don't have the skills, the design skills, they don't have the marketing skills, they don't have the photography skills, they don't have the budget to hire a good photographer, right? The value sometimes comes over time as you just get better in your craft. So, that's kind of one of the cons. It's not always great for people just getting started. So a competitive pricing strategy is basically what it says is you are going to base your price on the competitor's price. And you can sell either above your competition, below your competition, or price match. I see a lot of small businesses come to me and say they want to do competitive pricing, right? I just want to be a little bit cheaper than my competitor. So I'm not really a fan of that, but I know that a lot of folks do like to use this strategy. So again, it's relatively simple. And you can weed out people who won't value what you have to offer. And you can also pair this with another strategy. So one of the cons is that when you're just looking at it based on what another company is doing, it sometimes doesn't allow you to really get intimately involved and knowledgeable with your own numbers, right? Those are their numbers, those are not your numbers, right? So you have to make sure, are you covering your cost, right? Does this price even work for your business? And a lot of times you can have lower margins when you do this, and you can leave money on the table. And it doesn't really focus on the customer. So I don't know if anyone has any questions, or I could kind of keep going. I don't know if we've had new people hop on, but any questions so far, or should I just keep plugging away?
No questions for me.
Okay.
I
Um,
love the backstory about your businesses, though.
oh, yay. I'm always trying to bring that in when I can and say, hey, I get this. I know
It's
the struggle.
inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's see. So I walked through just a cost plus pricing strategy example. And, if we had more folks on here, small businesses on here, I'd totally be happy to kind of walk through their business as well. And this is something that anyone can reach out to me and we can kind of do some examples with your own numbers. But I just have example here. So if a company makes a widget, whatever they make, it costs $1.50 per widget. So the labor to make each widget is, let's say, 50 cents. Okay. And so this is the part that a lot of businesses don't calculate. But in order to really look at what that labor is going to be, you need to look at either what, if you're going to pay someone to do this job, even if it's just you, when you hire someone, how much are you going to pay them? So let's say you're going to pay them $18 an hour, right? And in 1 hour, they can make so many widgets. So you would divide that hourly rate by however many widgets they can make in an hour. And there goes your 50-cent price per widget. Let's say the monthly overhead for the business is $3,000, and in a month they can make 5,000 widgets. So we're going to put overhead at about 60 cents per widget. And these are just estimates. It's sometimes that overhead amount is a little bit hard to break down per widget, but this is just to give you an example of ways to look at this. So we have the total cost per widget at our materials, our labor, and our overhead, which is $2.60. If the company wants to make a 30% profit, they would charge $3.38 for that. So they are going to take 30% of the cost, which is 78 cents, to the total cost of the product. So hopefully that makes sense. So this is kind of a product-based business. It's a simple way to think about it. And when I say profit, I mean net profit. Obviously, like your very bottom line is what you want to do. So people ask all the time, what's a good profit? And I would say as much profit as you can make, right? Like obviously you don't, it has to be reasonable. And it's also going to be based on the industry that you are in. But a 30% profit is net profit is pretty good for a lot of businesses. So a second example would be a photographer, right? Because a lot of these strategies are kind of like, okay, I have a product-based business, but what if I'm offering a service? And I always say, well, what do you want to make for that service per hour? Or if you were to be hired somewhere to do this job, how much would you make, right? So let's say a photographer charges $50 an hour for their work, which is their labor, and they have a monthly overhead of $1,000, and they can work 200 hours per month. So that's about a $5 in overhead per hour. And they got a job that they think is going to take 5 hours for them, and they want to make a 35% profit on that job. So you would take their $50 an hour rate they want to make, the $5 overhead, so that's $55 times 5 hours of work, it's $275 plus the 35% markup. So 35% of 275 is 96.25. So they really should quote for this job around 371.25 if they want to make a 35% profit in their business. So those are just a couple examples. Again, happy to work through some more examples, but that just has given you an idea of the cost plus pricing strategy and how to work that. Some of these other ones I don't have examples in the same way, but the value-based examples. So this is, again, a strategy that's going to require a lot of research and data, and you're going to determine the value. So some companies that we are familiar with is Apple. Of course, I mentioned it. The pricing of the phone is not based on cost. It's based on what they perceive the value of the phone will bring to their customers' lives. I think about coffee businesses like a Starbucks or even some of the other coffee businesses, right? Um, it is beyond what the cost of the cup of coffee is, right? You know, that's why you go places and it's like $7 for a cup of coffee. Okay, we all know the coffee is not costing that much, but you know, they're looking beyond the cost of the cup of coffee, beyond the overhead, and they're looking at what is the value for you to have hot coffee served to you and not have to make it at home, right? Or what other conveniences this gives to you. Let's say you have marketing or service-based businesses and you provide SEO, search engine optimization support, or design support, you know, photography support, graphic design support. You might not want to do that cost strategy earlier, and you can just look and see with, again, doing some research, how much your work is going to increase the revenue of this business. So what is the value of the work going to bring, right? Not just what your time is worth, but how much value is this going to bring to, say, you're doing services for another small business. What can they expect in revenue? What can they expect in increased searches? And again, just tying it back to that value without only looking at the cost. The value-based strategy is one that can really be incorporated well with another strategy. So with these strategies, it doesn't always have to be one or the other. You know, you can do a cost model, but also incorporate some level of also looking at value too, right? So, you know, it's not just a one size fits all. Let's see. So the competitive examples. This strategy is used in very crowded industry. It could be used to set price above, below, or at a match. I personally don't think this is always the best for small businesses to do on their own, like this strategy alone, unless you have scale and you can truly compete, right? So a lot of businesses I talk to, they think Amazon is their competitor when really it's probably not their competitor, right? You're not going to be able to compete with the Amazon if you're looking at a pricing alone, right? Um, and so I really like urge a lot of business owners not too caught up in looking at big box stores and trying to match their pricing to theirs, because that's a recipe to go out of business. Okay. Basically, that's how I look at that. And so some examples of industries that do this is airlines, right? You know, airlines do this a lot. You know, if you do a search, you're going to see all the airlines right next to each other. You're looking at it based on price. Some of them, their strategy is to have their price $30 lower than everybody else. Some people want their price a little bit higher to kind of sell you on their more of a luxury airline or a better airline or a higher quality airline. So this is an industry that does that a lot, right? They're setting prices based on their competitors. The big box stores, you think about the Targets and the Walmarts and the Amazon, they're setting their prices based on these other stores as well. You know, Target is usually a little bit higher than Walmart, and their sales like, hey, we're more luxury, it's a better shopping experience. Walmart is like, hey, we want to be the lowest price, right? So they are kind of using that competitive pricing strategy a lot. And then I see a lot of small sellers who are on Etsy and Amazon where customers are just overwhelmed with choices, right? There's so many people that are selling a sunscreen or so many people that are selling whatever, that they might use this pricing strategy to, you know, be able to compete. So those are kind of the three. And again, there are other ones that I encourage people to kind of explore if none of these really seem to fit with you or fit for you. So some of the common pricing mistakes that I've seen just in my own experience and then also just working with a lot of business owners is that they don't have any strategy at all, right? So they just kind of guess and pricing is an afterthought. So that's a big mistake. Also not knowing your costs. Not knowing your costs. I don't know what else to say about that. I think it's one of the number one issues I see with small businesses is they don't have a handle on these numbers. And um, as a consultant, I always encourage people to come back to the numbers, right? Like, let's stop talking about marketing. Let's stop talking about all of this if we don't understand the numbers because we could be losing money and then we're just trying to market our life away on a product that's not making money, right? So again, always to the numbers and being really involved with them. Pricing too low. I mean, this is something I personally had to deal with on my own is just around feeling afraid to charge more, right? Are people going to buy it? Is it too high? Just really having that doubt creep in, the fear of charging what you believe your product is worth. I see. Yeah, skilled labor intensive businesses such as a seamstress. Yeah, so definitely. I think that I would really this I kind of look at those as like service-based businesses. And again, this can all be, I would say you could look at a value business and then a value model and also a cost business, right? So looking at about what you think again your hourly rate would be for this and how long it's going to take you to do that job, right? So if you are a seamstress and it's going to take you 30 minutes to do that job, right? I would think you're probably, and you've been doing it for 30 years and you're really great, you know, you might say, hey, my hourly rate is $200 or whatnot, right? And so you might charge someone $100 for this garment. Um, Also, I think, especially in a business like with a seamstress, it's gonna determine on what people are paying you for, right? And that your pricing model might have to change mm, based on what people are bringing their items into you for. So, for example, if someone is tailoring their wedding dress, you might have a different rate for that versus if someone is just coming in and they want to hem their pants, right? So, it's not always a one size fits all model, but I think with an industry like that, you're really trying to figure out how much time, making sure you're paying yourself for your time and also making sure you're covering your overhead. So I hope that kind of answered it. Some of the other mistakes are, again, pricing too low, not making adjustments to pricing, right? So pricing is not one of those things where you can just set it and forget it. And so again, a seamstress, right? Her pricing might be one way when she first gets started, and then her expertise grows and her prices, increase to meet and reflect her expertise in that, and her precision with that skill set. So making adjustments to pricing based on how you elevate in your delivery of the product or service to people, and also to reflect the market, right? Everyone knows everything is getting more expensive. So I was just listening to a podcast yesterday and they said if your prices are the same this year as they were last year, you probably are either losing money or not really making as much as you can because the cost of doing business for almost everything has gone up over the last year or two. So really coming back to that pricing and making sure that it still makes sense. Not communicating increases to customers and losing trust. I see a lot of small businesses do this, and sometimes they just arbitrarily hike up their prices and they don't explain to their customers why that is. And I think that that can just, again, lose trust with your customers. And I think it makes sense to obviously go up in price when the time fits. But I think there are responsible ways that you can communicate that to customers so that they understand why you're doing that. Running too many discounts. I know in my first business, I did that a lot. I really thought I had to always offer a discount for something or some type of sale for something. And while I think there's value in that and it can be helpful at times, when you discount your product too much, you kind of train people to not pay full price. And you train them to expect some money off from you. Like when I go to Kohl's, like I'm always looking for a coupon because like everything in Kohl's is on sale. So I can't tell you the last time I went to Kohl's and I'm like full price. Like, what is that? Right? Because they've kind of trained their customers to expect everything to be on sale, to expect some type of coupon, expect some kind of discount. And I think it's really difficult for businesses to get out of that kind of sales mindset. And so if you want to do that for a limited time, just know that once you do it for too long, it's really hard to kind of go back to um, being able to charge full price. So just make sure you're using your discount sparingly. And if you're selling a product, you don't account for wholesale potential. So I see a lot of businesses do this as well. They might start selling their products, their cookies or their whatever they're selling at a farmer's market or direct to consumer. And then they want to get into the business of selling to cafes or restaurants or grocery stores. And, you know, when you sell wholesale, you're going to have to bring the price of your product down. So if something sells for $4 to the end consumer, the wholesale is going to want to make sure that they can buy it for around $2. Okay. So they can mark it up and be able to sell it for $4. So if it's costing you $2 to make it, you know, there might not be enough room in there for you to consider even being able to do wholesale. So if you're selling a product and you think wholesale is possibly in your future, you just want to make sure you're priced accordingly for that as well. So those are some common mistakes. Let's see what's next. So this is a P&L. This is a P&L for a client that I was working on. I changed all their stuff, so we really don't see any unique details. But I wanted to just again give you an idea of, and I know that this is really small, and these are the numbers that start to give me a headache. I don't know if this does for you, but so we'll go through it pretty quickly. But just to see how it impacts your bottom line. Okay, so they have about 7 different revenue streams in this business. And so we plan it all out, projecting what they're going to do for each revenue stream. Some of these are either services or they might be a rental of their space. So there's no direct cost. But these are the streams that they sell, and these are the direct cost. So the actual materials. So let's say they're selling jars of honey. And then this is going to be right here, the cost of goods for the honey, right? So the actual honey, the labels, um, you know, the jars, like everything is going into that cost of goods for that. And so you can see here that their total revenue for year one is 868,490, and their total cost of goods for year one was 258,912. So they're at about 30% cost of goods. Okay. In a food-based business, this is pretty on track, maybe a little high, but this is pretty much on track for kind of like a food-based business. So before we start deducting anything else, they've got a margin of 70%. Okay. We built in some owner salary. You see, they are making 868, but they're only paying themselves 23,000. It's not always fun being a business owner, but everybody else has got to get paid first. So they have their salary, they have the wages. This is what it's taking an employee and staff to run this. We have payroll costs, like this is payroll taxes, workman's comp, advertising, property taxes, utilities, garbage, internet, blah blah blah. Okay, all the expenses. This person, they had a loan, so we had to calculate the interest on that loan. It was a high loan. So we see at the bottom here, their net income is about 7%. So 61%, $61,000, even though they brought in 868. This isn't a great net income. So I'm not showing this as like the poster child. I'm showing this to say, when sometimes I work with businesses and their costs are so high that they're already down to 50% before we start with any operating expenses, right? So that's why pricing your product appropriately is so important, because there's just so many expenses hidden, ones that you forget, ones that always are coming up that you don't think about and that are going to really impact your bottom line. So you want to make sure you're priced appropriately. So that's a sample P&L. And let's see. That was kind of what I had for the meat of it, but any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns?
I learned. I'm not a business owner though, so a lot of this was brand new for me, but I definitely thought it was valuable information. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else? Any other thoughts, comments? Anything you want me to expand on or chat more about?
I agree with Marcia. I thought it was a really great presentation, and I'm also not a business owner, so it was really insightful to learn from the other side. And when I get frustrated with prices, I now can look at them and see all the thought process that goes into it.
Okay, yeah,
Very
definitely.
true.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we think things are like, wow, that's so expensive, but it's not just the cost of the materials, it's just so many other things that go into it. And I mean, I live in the Milwaukee area, and I mean, every day I'm reading the journal, and it's just businesses that are closing left and right. Um, and you just think the cost of doing business is so expensive. So people have to make sure they're priced appropriately, to be able to stay open. Um, let's see. I just will go through really quickly about the SBDC. So the SBDC, we're part of the University of Wisconsin, the Office of Business and Entrepreneurship. These are some of our other units. The Center for Technology Commercialization. We have the Food Finance Institute and Your Economy. So Your Economy will help you with kind of data research. The FFI will help with food specific businesses, and the CTC is for technology based businesses. And then, of course, we're at the SBDC, and we will work with all small businesses in the state of Wisconsin. So we can help with any stage. I always say at the Kenosha SBDC, we really help a lot with the financing, like for clients that are looking for financing, helping them get prepared. So developing those financial projections, kind of what I showed you on that one spreadsheet, helping people understand their numbers, also helping new businesses get started and understand the startup process and navigating, getting their LLC, getting insurance, and all of the steps they need to take. So yeah, again, all of our services are no cost. They're confidential, so we won't share your information. We do have some business education online as well. And this is my contact info if anyone has any questions or wants to chat more about pricing or anything small business. So, yes, thank you all. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Savannah, for being a partner for Kenosha Public Library Small Business Series. I think what I'll do, since we had quite a few no-shows for this one based probably on the weather, I will contact all the people who were registered and I will send them the link to the recording.
Perfect.
And just a reminder, we do have one more small business lunch and learn coming up. That will be on March 12th, and registration is available on the Kenosha Public Library website. Is that it, everyone?
Perfect. I think so.
All
Yeah.
right. Thank you all, and I am going to end this recording.